Okay, I think this is a very important part for the legal age of culpability. I'm just going to read through it and then try to explain as far as possible. Snyman is an author on criminal law in South Africa. You can Google him, Professor Snyman, and his latest book on criminal describes culpability as whether or not, in the eyes of the law, there are grounds for blaming X personally for his unlawful conduct. So, that is to blame the person for the unlawful conduct that he refers to. So, in any law lecture that you'll always find they refer to X. X is the person that we refer to. So the test is whether or not it is appropriate to hold X blameworthy for his conduct. Various consideration comes into play when deciding on the blameworthiness of a person, such as criminal capacity. Our law has adopted a two-leg approach in determining whether one capacity at the time of committing the offense. That could be, could X appreciate the wrongfulness of his actions, and could X act in accordance with such appreciation? Okay, I'm going to stop just at that point over there. Sounds a bit confusing, but it isn't. Could X appreciate the wrongfulness of his actions? So, with culpability, there's wrongfulness, and at the time. So, the South African criminal law is complicated, and a big burden is placed on the state or the person who has to prove the case against the accused. Let's say it's a child. And in appreciating the wrongfulness of his actions, you must look at what the facts of the case are. If we take the example of a 13-year-old child, and the child was instructed to grab the bag after collections on a Friday. So, fortunately, in Masjid you've got the cameras, and we pick it up on the CCTV. So, appreciate the wrongfulness of his actions. How are you going to prove that? How are you going to say so? And I'm trying to explain this now. Each masjid that we have has got a board of trustees and has got those who are in charge of the masjid or a council. So, if the masjid is going to lay a complaint and they can identify the child or they can identify the person as such, in a masjid environment. This is not only for children, this is for any person who commits an offense. It's going to have to be decided, are we going to send Sheikh Mukhtar, are we going to send this uncle to represent the masjid? Because what you're going to have is you're going to have a complaint of theft from the masjid. So who's going to be the complainant? The complainant is going to be Masjid al-Taqwa or Masjid Mansour. And who is going to go and represent? Someone needs to go and explain in court that this is what the money, how the money is collected. That is where we put the money. And now they're going to play the video footage in court where you can see the person. Now, to prove the wrongfulness of his or her actions, you look at what that person done. Let's say, for example, the salah starts and the person says, Allahu Akbar. On the video footage, or a person who sees what's happening, you see the person coming in, looking around, they're going to sajda, and then he sees there's a gap over there. The person then takes a route where you can calculate what's the quickest way to move. If I grab the bag, it's now the second rak'ah. He's watched for the first rak'ah to take place. And he says, okay, they spent 2 minutes in sajda. So, in the second rak'ah, when they start the first sajda, I need to hit for it. So you look at the facts of the case, you look at the actions of the person, and you look at what the person does, how he or she calculates his or her actions in committing the offense, and then you'll be able to prove the wrongfulness of his actions by just looking at what the facts are. When it comes to could X act in accordance with such appreciation of his wrongfulness, you deal with the same actions and facts of the perpetrator to prove appreciating the wrongfulness of his actions at that time. So, in the case of a child, deal with the child quickly first. If the adult uses the child, say the child is 16 years old, I differentiate in age, and you'll see why I differentiate with age when we come to the next page over there. You look at the facts of the case. He's a 16-year-old. What did he do? What did he do? Grabbed the bag, waited for the first, watched for the first rak'ah to finish, second rak'ah. He then carries out his action of grabbing the bag and running out of the masjid. Or even with shoes. I think it's died out now, alhamdulillah, but let's say grab the bag and they run out. So the 16 at the time, once he grabs the bag, he knows everybody's in the second sajda or the first sajda. He shoves the bag under his jacket and he stands there as if he's carrying on with the second rak'ah. The second sajda, that's when he takes his gap. So there, at the time, the minute he conceals the bag, we can say he appreciated the wrongfulness of his actions. So you just need to use the facts and look at what the person does in establishing if you can show the wrongfulness and the appreciation of the wrongfulness of his actions. Now it becomes problematic because in all laws that you have that deal with culpability and criminality, you've also got the Criminal Procedure Act 51 of 1977, where there are different, it's the code for South African criminal law. With that over there, you must always know, then under the Criminal Procedure Act, you've got section 77, 78 and 79. In South Africa, we do not have a defense that says, I was mad at the stage. It doesn't work. Not in South Africa. So just to deviate there, you can't come to court and say, I was mad at the stage. Because if you say you were mad at the stage, then you lack that appreciation for the wrongfulness that you've done. Because your mental state is such that you can't appreciate what you're doing wrong. So if you look at section 76, 77, 78, 79, you will then pick up over there that where you can show that where the child is not of a mental state of having appreciated, or the person, the adult person, is not of a mental state of having been able to appreciate the wrongfulness, that section of the Criminal Procedure Act will deal with the person as such. So, in the case of your minor offenses, I'm just going to say to the exclusion of murder, rape and robbery, in your minor offenses, then they would have either a course for the person to go on, you would become an outpatient in the environment of the mental institutions that we, our case in Port Elizabeth, the hospital's name, Donkin, the Donkin over there, under Professor Grobler, they will deal with the person as such. And then in the case of more, for the ladies, yeah, the same. In the case of your more serious offenses, murder, rape and robbery, we have what is when the person is called or is declared a state president's patient. So the trial will not proceed against that person. Now I give you the example, a couple of years ago, there was a gentleman killed in Masjid Abrar over there. It was a foreign national who was the accused, I forget now what's his name, but the murder took place in the masjid. In the start of that trial, little known to everybody else, the accused actually said, the accused's legal counsel said, well, he's not mentally stable. And we said that the justice system takes long and it's a process that must take place. Yes, it does take long and there's a lot of paperwork. But just to give you that example where actually a masjid was the murder scene, where that accused then said, well, mentally unstable, because it was a murder, and we said it was claimed to have been premeditated as such, the accused had to be referred to Fort England in East London, where they observe him for 30 days. For 24 hours a day, he's kept under observation in terms of section 77, 78, and 79, that deals with your more serious offenses. And from there, 2 psychologists employed by the state and 1 independent psychologist deal with a report after his observation for 24 hours to establish these 2 points, wrongfulness and appreciation. So that when he comes into court, you've got the report that says he could appreciate the wrongfulness of his actions at the time of committing the murder. It wasn't a very nice scene. Fortunately, a colleague of mine prosecuted in that case. And in that circumstances, to explain what the masjid looks like, and that I know for a fact they visited the masjid, they call it inspection in loco, where they actually had to show this is where you were sitting, this is where the attack took place, example, so forth. So wrongfulness and appreciation, if you're going to be sitting as a board or as the imam in establishing or viewing footage if there is, whether we are going to proceed with this case, because it's going to be somebody from the trust or the imam of the masjid who's going to have to go to the court and say, I'm the imam, this is what took place, these are the facts of the case, I downloaded the footage. There's a lot that goes with presenting of evidence, but we can deal with that some other stage. If we proceed, one of the considerations in our law is that our law, that is one's criminal capacity, is maturity. Our law recognizes that in order for a person to have criminal capacity, to have the requisite culpability, X must have insight, understanding, ability to distinguish between right and wrong, cognitive ability, and the ability to act in accordance with such appreciation, that is cognitive ability, cognitive ability. That's the two that we explained on top, that I try to explain.